Welcome to the Leadership Conversations podcast. I'm your host, Jono White. I'm the founder and principal consultant of Clarity. We are an Australian-based consultancy that works with leaders around the world, and our passion is to invest in people to become everything they're meant to be in order to fill the world with healthy organizations that people love to work for and customers line up to buy from. The goal of this podcast is to invest in you and your leadership. If you're just joining us for the first time, then feel free to check out consultclarity.org. That's our website, consultclarity.org. We have so many free resources on there, the most popular being our 7 Questions on Leadership series. We've had more than 1,500 leaders from around the world in all different sectors give their in-depth answers on leadership, what books they love, what they found most challenging, the most meaningful stories, how they structure their time through the day. That's free, so go and check it out. And we'd love to interview you about your leadership. I believe you have advice from your experience, your context, and your life so far that is important and can help other leaders. It's also a great way to give back. It's free to get involved, and you can do so by going to consultclarity.org/7-questions-interest, or just Google consultclarity.org 7 questions interest and fill out the form that pops up. We have a free resource for you on our website. It's called Leadership Survival Guide. It's a 57-page ebook. It has interviews with 10 world-class leaders, and you can go to consultclarity.org. It's right at the top, and get that today. We also have a daily email that we send out to over 15,000 leaders, and that email contains the highlights, our best content from our podcasts, our blog, my book, the books that we're loving that are out there about leadership. It's also the best way to get access to our masterclasses and workshops before anyone else. And there's also exclusive and limited special options just for subscribers. And you can subscribe by going to consultclarity.org/subscribe. Now, my gift to you is to work incredibly hard to provide the best leadership content I can to invest in you and your leadership. So if you're finding our content helpful, if you find this podcast helpful, then your gift to me could be this. If you do find it helpful, then write a review or rate our content and make sure you subscribe or follow. I can't emphasize enough how helpful that is. It really does help us to get the word out there so we can invest in more leaders to become everything they're meant to be. It also means a lot to me personally when people like you and people in our community share our content on social media. So if you do that, then please do look for me, Jono White, to tag me, and look to tag Clarity on whatever platform you're on. And our team, including me, I'm always looking to see when people have mentioned us so that I can engage with you. And also we look at sharing content. So if you write something about something we've done, there's also a good chance we'll share that with our followers. So if you could do that, that is a massive, massive help as we try to invest in as many leaders as we can around the world. Last of all, you can check out my book about how to deal with difficult people even if you hate conflict. It's called Step Up or Step Out. It's available on Amazon. You can just look up Step Up or Step Out Jono White, or you can go to store.consultclarity.org/book and check it out there. I have coached leader after leader after leader, and in more than 50% of the sessions, this topic comes up. How do I deal with this person? I'm finding it really difficult, and I just want to find a way that doesn't blow up, to just to have a difficult conversation, to lead them better. How do I do that? There's a 3-step process that I outline in this book that I believe can help you. Okay, let's get into today's episode of the Leadership Conversations podcast. Enjoy. Welcome to another episode of the Leadership Conversations podcast. Today's guest is Odie Donald II, and Odie is the Chief of Staff for the City of Atlanta. Welcome to the podcast, Odie.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Excited to join you today.
Yeah, so am I. I'm really looking forward to hearing some of your story. First of all, for our listeners who are in all different parts of the world, Odie, and so I always find it fascinating how different countries, different governments, different, how it works differently. Can you tell us a little bit about what you do as chief of staff for the city of Atlanta?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I serve under Mayor Andre Dickens, who is the 61st mayor of Atlanta. And he joins the city at a very crucial time in our future where we have been ranked as one of the most inequitable cities in the nation. And on his behalf, I oversee the mayor's office and oversee all political and staff activities related to carrying out his big vision for Atlanta. So he is focused on housing, or housing equity for sure, youth services, workforce development, efficient government, and the quick, fast, and effective delivery of services for our government that has about 10,000 employees. And so, on his behalf, I carry out his vision for the city and ensure that our everything from our day-to-day operations, legislative activities, and his political will, truthfully, is carried out throughout all areas of government.
Yeah, fantastic. That's a very articulate way to explain a big job. So thank you for doing that. Let's let's jump into your story. I'm really excited to. I always love hearing leaders' stories. Let's start with your childhood, Odie. Growing up, as you look back, what were some of the moments from that season of your life that really shaped you into the person and the leader you are today?
Yeah, man, so many. That's really a great question. So I am from what most folks call the SWATs, Southwest Atlanta. A part of town that has for a very long time been kind of the cradle of African American leadership, and had a very unique childhood because both of my parents were from other places. They kind of migrated to Atlanta together. And, as I was a child, they ended up getting divorced. And so I got to see two different Atlantas. So my father was a high ranking executive as I was growing up. He ran Bell South Mobility, cable and wireless in the Caribbean, as well as direct TV as I was kind of coming of age, while my mother went back to school at the illustrious Georgia State University and would kind of tote me and my younger brother around, and she was juggling motherhood, working for the state, as well as pursuing, her degree. And so financially, I think, my father was in an extraordinary place, and my mother would be considered working class. And so we stayed in different parts of the community, some of those projects and low income housing, all the way to some of the better neighborhoods in Southwest Atlanta. While I think conversely, on the other side, I would be with my father staying in what would be more of the more affluent African American, and then just in general most affluent communities in Atlanta. So I think that really kind of helped to create, I guess, my perspective as a leader, being able to see, the various parts of life, having access to everything that really the world could offer, but also, enduring some of the challenges that come when you're in a lower income state and capacity. And so I think that has given me the perspective to be inclusive, uh, to really understand the challenges and the ills, and also what happens when government or systems don't work or include everyone. And so I think the biggest thing that I have taken from some of those experiences is really ensuring that when it comes to my profession in government, that government works for all people, but even more than that,
Mm,
ensuring that citizens have a voice in their community, because regardless of what spectrum you are on the totem pole, you're
yeah.
contributing to society, and really should have a stronger voice. And the less equity you're involved in, the more of a voice you should have.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And I can hear, I love hearing your passion for government because of the role you're in, and such an important just I think you and the team that you're a part of, it sounds like you're doing incredible work. As you think back, Odie, I love how you explained sort of having a foot in two different um, experiences that a lot of people would only experience one or the other, but you sort of experienced both. Specifically around government and services around government, are there any stories from your childhood, from either side, whether it was with your mum or with your dad, that really played a big part in giving you the passion that you have for government? Either something that you experienced that negatively, or something you experienced really positively around government. Does anything come to mind?
Yeah, I'll tell you, I'd say two things, and one would be from childhood, probably my first job, and then I think the other would be, in my adult life, post my athletic days, really making some poor decisions and needing to have access to government. And I think those two activities are those, different polar experiences are really what have shaped me to this day. So as a young man, my father was the president of Bell South Mobility at the time that the Olympics was coming, and I think very instrumental in ensuring that the Olympics came to Atlanta. And so because of that, I got the benefit of having, my first job being around the Olympics, both as a part of the Olympics as well as a summer program that gave youth access to the Olympics. And so as a young man myself, I think it was around 16, maybe 17 years old, I got to really engage with some of, what would be the greatest leaders in Atlanta's history, Maynard Jackson, Shirley Franklin, two of our greatest mayors, if not the two greatest mayors, but also, different business people from R.K. Siegel, who was working with H.J. Russell, one of the larger African American construction firms. And then my first job was actually as I guess we'll call it a camp counselor, as for Capitol View Apartments, a program that was ran into that community, and it was a housing project at the time. And so I think the folks there were really looking for opportunities to be connected with the Olympics and be connected to all of the opportunities that were coming to Atlanta and giving access to those young folks. And what I experienced was, the responsibilities of government and service delivery at a time that I was not welcome or not ready. And I ended up being terminated from a job that I guess my father probably created for me. And the lesson that I learned from that is, government is about access, it's about service delivery, and it's about quality. And those
Yeah,
expectations that we have for our government, you know, apply to everyone. And so I think for me,
yeah,
being in government much later in life, I think my expectations of our staff and of all of those that benefit from the investment that our community stakeholders make, whether it be with their sales tax dollars or their property tax dollars, or even with their, expectations and desires for what they want to see in government, I think that's really shaped my perspective is that heavy burden and blessing of being able to lead and serve those in your community. Really quickly though, I think as
mm,
I got older, I was an athlete, did very well, played internationally in about 9 different countries, and made a decent amount of money. But of course, injuries and things always come into play. And as I was exiting being an athlete, experienced some injuries, put some funds away for a rainy day, which was a smart thing to do, but likely the timing not so much. And because of that, I had no degree. I left school early to pursue my dream and have that level of success. But entering into the job market post being an athlete was very difficult. And so I actually experienced a bout of sporadic homeless and could not access government services
wow,
when needed. And so
mm,
that's actually how I got my entryway into government, and it's been the thing that has fueled me ever since. Is really knowing that you know the issues that government helps to resolve and
mm,
provide in the service delivery mechanism is something that impacts everyone, regardless of what they look like, regardless of what their experiences are, or how you view them. Everyone deserves that level of access to be able to take those next steps in their life, in their career, for their family, to be safe, to be to have access to employment, to be able to contribute to how services are delivered in their community. All of those things are extremely valuable. And when government fails at that, it plays a very unique and impactful role in the success of its citizens. And so I got that
Yeah.
lesson both as a young
Wow.
man and as an adult.
Yeah, incredible. Thank you so much for sharing both of those stories. And I want to ask you about your career as an athlete and leadership, and
Yeah.
such different experiences from being a professional athlete to leading in government, and yet I imagine there are some overlapping principles. What did you learn as an
Yeah.
athlete that you feel has really stuck with you, and you sort of use those same lessons as a leader?
I think it's the fact that everyone is valuable, and whether it be government, whether it be business, whether it be athletics, which to be honest is a private sector business. It takes everybody, and everybody has value. I had some success as a young man. Whether it be we won a AAU national championship as a 17-year-old. Playing with a bunch of pros and against a bunch of pros, while also having some success in college. Both at two universities that ended up playing in the NCAA tournament, winning conference championships, and all of that good stuff. And when I look back on my time as an athlete, whether it be internationally or right here in the States, the most important members of the team were sometimes the folks that didn't play much. The person who, when you're not playing well, that would go to the gym and get shots up with you, or go to the weight room late at night, let you release some
Mm,
steam and just kind of talk through things, has an incredible value. It definitely had a value for me. But also, the person that gets you hyped before a big game but also calms you down and give you that balance is not always, your point guard or your center or your leading scorer or any of those things. And, that's many times who we're following as athletes as a part of that. But then also being bestowed the leader or the position of team captain, and looking at your peers who are looking to you for leadership in what is sometimes very dire situations and difficult situations, I think helped to prepare me for just leadership in general. And I'll give you a quick story about that. When I was in the District of Columbia, we
mm,
were ranked, when I came, DC is neither a city nor a state nor a county. It's a district. And so it's kind of an outlier. And so there are 9 additional places like that. Puerto Rico, I won't go through all of them, but of the 59 states and districts, DC was rated, number 59 when it came to workforce and economic development programs. So you got to be really bad to be 59, the 59th state out of 50. And when we look at our turnaround, which happened very quickly and probably is the thing that helped to catapult my career, the people who made the biggest difference in that turnaround were the folks that you wouldn't expect to have had an input. I still remember and talk about my guy Vernon, who worked in our mailroom and served as my driver during the time of my tenure there. And unemployment insurance was just a big challenge for us there. And while we came up with amazing strategies to get funds out of the door, eliminate waste, fraud, and abuse, and redo our procurement practices, among other things, the biggest part was making sure that folks got paid. And Vernon, one day, he was seeing all the success we had, and he wanted to be a part of it because he was, closest to the executive leader. And we had to have the conversation that he might be the most vital part, because about 80% of the folks receiving unemployment insurance didn't do it through direct deposit. They did it through the mail. No matter what we put into place, no matter what our strategy was, if we didn't have folks like Vernon carrying out and implementing at the highest levels, then we would have never been able to truly have the levels of success that are necessary. So again, just like in basketball or any other
Mm,
sport, the
yeah.
least of these are sometimes the most important folks. And so that's also why you take care of them, as you go through these processes to make sure that you're delivering the best services, because the folks that are closest to the ground are the most important part of the service delivery process.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And what have you learned about how to get reliable feedback? Because it gets harder and harder in larger organizations. But you hit the nail on the head. The people who are most important are the people closest to the ground who are actually doing that work. And I often hear leaders explain the challenge of getting really hearing as clearly as possible from the people who are on the ground. What have you learned about how to do that?
Man, I'll tell you, it's been a work in progress, and it changes from city to city and place to place. I've had the honor and the privilege of working for 9 different executives, both mayors, governors, different executives throughout government, and we do something different in every place. And but the key is going directly to the people. Both external customers and internal customers is how I look at it. And so the greatest ideas, the greatest strategies, all of those things have actually come from our frontline workers. One thing that I have implemented is something I call leadership on location. And so that's where we take the biggest problems in government and we take them to our frontline staff. Senior leaders have no role in this process. They can observe, they take notes, they help to facilitate, but they don't actually get to be ideal folks in this instance. We go to frontline folks with some of those biggest problems and we ask them how they would resolve them. And I'll tell you that process is undefeated because again, we're hearing from the people who really understand what's
Yeah.
important to our external customer. And the other part of it is they're going to be responsible for delivering that service. And so starting with them also helps them to become invested in these solutions. And so that's one way is really kind of cutting out the feedback loop and doing a direct, I'll call it direct to consumer or direct to customer,
Mm,
conversation and feedback loop, kind of shorten it, removing some of the roadblocks and kind of making sure that everyone is involved, but those closest to it get the first crack at resolving problems. It's the
yeah.
same thing with our external customers, though. When we're
Yeah.
talking about citizens who are funding the government, there's no way you can not hear from them and then, introduce everything from your budgets or your plans for new initiatives or even, large real estate ventures where you're bringing everything from affordable housing or in some instances, like we're doing in Atlanta, choosing our police chief. You've got to start with people. And I think that's something that I've been blessed to work with executive leaders who agree on that. And that's why we've been so successful.
Yeah, I really appreciate the different ideas you shared there. In terms of people you've worked with, and I know there's probably a long list, but can you share
Yeah.
a couple of great leaders who've had a big influence on you from watching how they have led through, whether it be they've had big wins or whether they've had to lead through a crisis, or you've just had the
Yeah.
chance to be in their team? Who comes to mind? Who's been a real mentor for you as a
Uh,
leader?
I tell you, first and foremost, I'm blessed because my father has been basically a Fortune 500, Fortune 100 CEO. And so having somebody like that under the same roof that you can go to is an amazing resource. And, probably outside of my son, serves as my best friend and mentor at the same time. So I always kind of start with him because his experiences, as an African American man who came up during the civil rights and affirmative action era to lead some of the largest companies in the world is a big deal. And so I think I start with him, but also, I had the pleasure of working for the Honorable Muriel Bowser in the District of Columbia, and her tenacity and love for Washingtonians is something that, to be honest, is the reason I'm back home in Atlanta right now. because other parts of the world have been extremely attractive and, have compensated me well and, taken care and exposed my family to things that I probably would have never seen. But that love for your hometown and to see, the people of your city have access and a true pathway to the middle class has been one of the things that has, inspired me. There's another young lady, Courtney
Mm.
Snowden, who served as the deputy mayor for economic development. I'm sorry, economic opportunity while I was in the district, who has been just as much friend as mentor, but taking things to the people and always ensuring that your door is open to the folks that nobody will listen to is a lesson that I will take with me forever. But I mean, there are so many different folks I could think of. Even when it comes to workforce development, Mr. Burrell Billingsley passed away a few years back, but the care in which he delivered service, he required excellence. And if you could not serve us, you had to move on and work somewhere else. But he'd help you find that right position for you. And so that care for making sure that we not only deliver services externally, but we take care of people and make sure they land well, because everyone deserves to earn for their family is something that is also, meant quite a bit to me, and I've incorporated into my leadership style. And then I'll be honest, and I'm not saying this just because I report and work for him now, but my current mayor, Andre Dickens, you know, I, I could have worked a lot of different places, and I won't mention some of the folks that were recruiting me before I came home, but I mean some of the biggest cities in our nation. And there is something very special about not only his genuine care for people, but his equitable vision for Atlanta, to be able to not only satisfy the needs of business, but do so in a way that people that have been left behind for a very long time have access to what the world has to offer, especially historic investments in our young people, is something that, I not only have a great respect for, but I admire, and is really the reason why I'm here today and why I've enjoyed working with his administration so much.
Yeah, wow, what a list! And great that you have the opportunity to work with someone who you respect so much and work for someone right now. Thank you for sharing that, Odie. Uh, well, let's jump into Leadership Express. I've got a few questions for you. Are you ready?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, the first question: what is a book that you've gifted to other people?
The Energy Bus. Yes, great book that talks
Mm.
about really making sure the energy within your organization matches where you want to go.
Ooh, I like that. The energy bus. Oh, great recommendation. I love asking that question. Okay, what about
Yeah,
right now? What are you reading? What are you listening to? What are you watching? Is there any blogs? Are there any books you're in the middle of? Anything that you're just really enjoying right now?
Yeah, I'm actually reading The Power Broker. Good friend, Mr. Howard Franklin, recommended it to me maybe almost 10 years ago. And as I move into this new role that is a little less operational than normal and more about influence, I've been reading The Power Broker, talking about the history of New York and how things got done. So that's one that I've been reading quite a bit. But I've also been up on podcasts quite a bit, and there's a podcast on Marcus Garvey called Black Moses that Miss Ann Hill Bond recommended to me about a week ago, and so I've been following it, just kind of learning more about not only Garvey, but how that pandemic, the initial pandemic that we know about, really impacted politics and the plight of African Americans in America.
Yeah, wow, that sounds. What was the name of the podcast again, or what was it
It's
about? Who
Black
is it about?
Moses is the
Black
actual,
Moses.
yeah.
Yeah.
Black Moses is the actual episode that I've been listening to
Ah,
over the last few days, but
great.
it's definitely a good one.
Yeah, wonderful. I'm always looking for new content. So I have to admit these questions in my
Yeah.
Leadership Express are a little bit selfish as well because I get the best recommendations and the Energy Bus is a great book as well. Great recommendation. So thank you, Odie.
Yeah,
What about
absolutely.
favorite questions that you ask? Say you're with a group of stakeholders, or you're sitting in an interview, a panel interview with someone to join the staff. Or you're sitting with your team. Are there any questions that you really like to ask people?
Yeah, I think, if I'm going through, let's say, the interview process and I'm looking at talent, I think, one thing that I've learned is that this stuff is everyone should benefit when you're connected in delivering service. And so first I ask what you're passionate about. What are you passionate about, not only in your professional life, but in your personal life? And I think the second thing is, as we enter into this journey together, what can I do and what can this organization do to help you reach your long term goals? I think it's a little bit
Mm.
selfish to think people are joining you, for as long as, forever. There is no forever. And so during our
Yeah,
time together, it doesn't necessarily have to be transactional. You want to make sure that we're vested together because, relationships, go beyond these geographic boundaries and these constraints of organizations. And so, how we can
yeah,
work together and how we can accomplish our goals together is good to know going in.
yeah. I love that. They're wonderful thoughts. Um, what about on a lighter note, or you can pick something serious, a movie or TV show that really influenced you?
So I'll tell you, I'm a big movie buff. I love movies, and now I will watch just about anything. But my all-time favorite movies are Coming to America,
Yeah,
Purple Rain, and I'll tell you that when it comes to TV, I've
yeah.
loved our TV. Well, movies. My third one is Scarface. I can't leave Scarface out.
Yes.
Those are my
Oh, what a
top
good
three.
list. I love it.
Yeah,
So different as well.
those are all of. Yeah, so I'm all over the spectrum. But when it comes to television, I have really been big on the television show Atlanta, but also
Ah.
another show called Snowfall is one
Mm-hmm.
that I really like as well. Those are kind of my two go tos right now that I have kind of been addicted to. And I'm also, because I have two young children that are, take all of the time that they want and that I love to give them, they love movies as well. So we're all addicted to Marvel movies, and we'll spend our
Yes.
Friday night watching NWE wrestling. Is a staple.
Yeah.
We've got to be home by 8 p.m. watching wrestling. So
Ah, that's so good. I love hearing that because coming from Australia, I have to admit the wrestling culture really gets lost on us over here. And whenever I hear
yeah,
something like that, I love to hear how you sort of interact with it as a family because I find that in the same way that I'm sure 5 day cricket matches that we love here and that if I could,
yeah,
I'd take 5 days off and go to the whole thing. Whereas I mention that to people in other parts of the world and they just think it's crazy that you would spend 5 days in one match for a sport. So wrestling,
I love
Friday
it.
night watching wrestling. That's so good, Odie. I love it.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay, last question. If you could only give one piece of leadership advice to a young leader, what would you say?
Wow, that's a really good question. One piece of advice. This is going to sound different, but I would say don't take advice. Follow your dreams and your visions. Listen to everyone, but don't take advice.
Mm,
Make your own decisions and stand on your own too, so that you don't have any regrets in the direction that you're going. Advice
mm,
can sometimes turn you around and get you
yeah.
off of your path. And I think as much as we listen to all of these great leaders, all of these excellent folks who have blazed, these different paths, most of them will tell you that while they may have been a blueprint or they had access to great leaders and had great mentorship, that path that they blazed is their own. And so I
Yeah.
guess to synthesize it, don't be afraid to blaze your own path.
Yeah, I love that so much because I just the other day watched the movie Bohemian Rhapsody about Queen. I know. Have you
Yeah,
seen that movie? Yeah, it's
I have. Yeah,
oh, and it just reminded me, Freddie Mercury. The reason I think I love those movies so much is they put you in the shoes of this great, incredibly talented person, and you forget when they're so famous and they're just that's a name,
yeah,
Queen,
yeah,
Freddie
yeah.
Mercury. You forget there was a time when people looked at him and said, "No, it's just not going to work," and you're crazy, and
That's
why?
right.
Like, what are you guys doing? And I think one of my favorite quotes is this: is that today's heresy is tomorrow's orthodoxy. And
That's
it's
right.
this idea that, when you really are passionate about something and people look at you and say it's crazy, like you said, you need to have wise people around you speaking into your life. But when Freddie Mercury style, I'm going to go and do this. Um, I think, once you've blazed that path right, then people come down the same path and they say, "This is great. Yeah,
Yeah,
this was always a great idea." But when you're in the midst of breaking that ground, as a lot of leaders are doing, there's always new ground to break. Everyone's not necessarily cheering you on, and you've got to have those moments where you go, "Actually, I'm going to stick to what I really believe and persevere."
you know, to that point, if you look at all of the great leaders, whether they be real mythical or somewhere in between, that is their story. Jesus was not the popular guy when he was walking this earth. Martin Luther King was villainized, back in the day. I mean, my father, when I talked to him about his path, his father thought he was crazy because he didn't go into construction. And truthfully, my father, who was a great businessman, thought I was crazy to go into government. But blazing your own path will always have the best results for your life. Yeah.
Oh,
And if you do it right, you'll help others.
yeah, that's right. Oh, I just love that, Odie. Such a great point to finish on. And I always love thinking of the person who's jogging somewhere, cycling on a train on the way to work. Who might be listening and has been umming and ahhing over a decision, and maybe the comment you made there will be the thing that helps them go. Actually, you know what? I am going to stick to my guns. I'm going to really push this thing, and I'm going to make this decision. So, what a wonderful way to land. For people who want to find out more about you and maybe follow you online or find out more
Yeah.
about the city of Atlanta and the amazing work you and the team are doing there, where can people find you online, Odie?
Yeah, absolutely. So my Twitter is O'Donald Iiodonaldii is my Twitter handle. My Instagram is Odie Donald on Instagram. And at the city of Atlanta, we are at the city of Atlanta on Twitter. Facebook is City of Atlanta. The same thing for LinkedIn and our Twitter. And so you can find out all of the amazing things that the Dickens administration is putting out into the world. And, if you're interested in some of the cool things I get to lead on behalf of our mayor, then you can look at my social media as well, and welcome everybody to join.
Wonderful. Well, make sure you go and find out more about Odie and the amazing work that he and the team are doing in Atlanta. I've certainly been inspired and challenged by today's conversation. And I want to thank our listeners for tuning in. Just such a great episode today. I've loved it. Don't forget, I also have the John O. White Leadership Podcast and the Leadership Question of the Day podcast, two other places you can go to continue to invest in your leadership. But I want to finish today by saying a massive thank you to you, Odie, for being so generous, for your humility, sharing your story. And I think you're going to break down a lot of walls for leaders who can hear you tell your story and go, oh, okay, I can be a significant leader who can have my own story. Those can coexist. And I just love how you shared your story and great anecdotes, but also great leadership wisdom. So thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that episode of the Leadership Conversations podcast as much as I did. If you're joining us for the first time, don't forget to check out consultclarity.org. That's our website, consultclarity.org, We have so many free resources on there, including our 7 Questions on Leadership series. We've had more than 1,500 leaders from all over the world in all different roles, in different industries, answer these 7 questions on leadership, and leaders give these in-depth answers around how they spend their time, a book that's been significant for them. It's just a gold mine. It's completely free to access, so go to consultclarity.org and look for that. We'd also love to interview you about your leadership. I believe your experience, your life, your context means that you have advice on leadership that other leaders can learn from. Yes, you, if you're going, not me, well, no, I really believe you would have something to add. So if you're looking for a way to give back, it's completely free to get involved. And we would love to interview you through the 7 Questions on Leadership. You just go to consultclarity.org/7-questions-interest, or Google consultclarity.org 7 questions interest and fill out the form and get involved. We have a free resource on our website called the Leadership Survival Guide. It's a 57-page ebook, 10 world-class leaders giving their thoughts on leadership, and that's completely free. It's available on our homepage, consultclarity.org, right at the top, so make sure you go and get that and download it today. And we have a free daily email that you can subscribe to. We send this out to over 15,000 leaders from around the world. And it contains the highlights of content from our podcasts, our blogs, our books we're reading. It's got the best content, and it gives you exclusive, limited, early access to our masterclasses, workshops, new products, special offers. It's all for our subscribers. You can go to consultclarity.org/subscribe and join 15,000 other leaders. And you know, my gift to you is to work really hard, particularly through the Leadership Conversations podcast. I have been blown away by the quality of the leaders, and I'm learning as much as anyone in doing these interviews. So I'm having a great time. And my gift to you is to keep lining up the best leaders I can to invest in your leadership. Your gift to me, if you're finding this helpful, there is something that you could do that would help us out massively. And that is to write a review and to leave a rating for our podcast or wherever you're watching or listening to this. I can't tell you how much that helps us out. Also, subscribe or follow. It really does make a difference in helping us to help more leaders become everything they're meant to be. Another thing that means a lot to me personally is when I see our community share our content. So if you do share this or any other piece of content on social media, then thank you, and please do that. And look for me, Jono White, or Clarity, and tag us in your post. Our team is always looking for posts to engage with from our community, and there's also a chance that we'll share your content to go beyond and share it with our followers. Last of all, you can check out my book. It's called Step Up or Step Out: How to Deal with Difficult People Even If You Hate Conflict. I wrote this book because 50% of the coaching sessions I have with leaders, this topic comes up again and again and again. And it's this idea of, how do I have this difficult conversation? How do I lead this person better when I'm finding them difficult? Or in some cases, you look and you say, I think I might be leading a difficult person. They're just quite difficult to lead, or I'm finding them quite difficult to lead. So there's a 3-step process that I unpack in Step Up or Step Out. And the amazing thing, and I've literally done this myself, and I've heard it anecdotally from other leaders as I've coached them, is that if you follow this process, you will see that person step up and change their behavior or make a decision, which is to step out some of the time. 95% of the time, people will step up or step out in just 4 weeks. And I stand by that. It's you have to read the book to understand, but I really do believe in it, and I've experienced it firsthand. It works. So you can go to Amazon, look up Step Up or Step Out Jono White, or store.consultclarity.org/book. Well, thank you so much for listening. We're going to be back with a new episode next time of the Leadership Conversations podcast. And I hope today has helped you to take another step towards becoming the leader you're meant to be. See you next time.